So, The Social Network is a biographical drama that was released in 2010, directed by David Fincher and written by Aaron Sorkin, and it's the film that tells a story about the founding and the creation of Facebook. And yes, guys, I wanted to dress up for today's video not only because the Oscars aired tonight, but I wanted to look nice while reviewing a Best Picture nominee that, well, quite frankly, should have fucking won Best Picture. Now, do not get me wrong, guys. I like The King's Speech. The King's Speech is actually a pretty damn good film. But better than The Social Network? Hell no! Before I continue on with today's video, I just wanted to say, welcome to my channel, everybody. For those of you who are coming by my channel for the very first time, be sure to hit the subscribe button if it's a feature video, it's a feature review, a reaction, a top 5, a top 10, or whatever I've coming your way, and join me on my journey to 10K subscribers and beyond, because believe me when I say this, guys, you are not going to miss the cool stuff I have coming your way. And for those of you who are coming back to my channel, by the way, welcome back, everybody. You have no idea how happy I am to see your faces once again. And let's also start our conversation below as well. Out of all the Best Picture nominees from 2010, which film do you think should have won? Do you think that King's Speech was the rightful winner? Do you think this movie should have won? Which movie do you think should have won? Let me know below. Alrighty, guys, so let's get into The Social Network.
Excellent!
It's blowing my mind right now that in the 13 years that I have talked about movies on this channel, that I have not once talked about this movie. Like, I've never done a review for this movie. Like, how have I not talked about The Social Network? Well, to be fair, there are many movies I want to review on this channel, and I just don't typically have the time to review them all. But in this case, for The Social Network, how have I not done so? You guys want to hear something else? And this just might blow up your guys' minds. Here we go. The Social Network was my first David Fincher film. And if you ask me, this movie was the perfect way for me to be introduced into this, to say the least, this genius filmography. Because let's be real here, guys. David Fincher is one of the most celebrated filmmakers of all time. Not just with The Social Network, with The Game, Fight Club, Seven, Gone Girl, not to mention his role Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, Mank, The Killer, and admittedly, there are a couple of films from that I still haven't seen. Like, for example, I have not seen Alien 3, to which I've been told regardless to stay away from that film. I have not seen The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. I have not seen Panic Room, but everything else that I have seen from him, there is no denying that David Fincher is one of the best filmmakers working today. Before I go on to the Gush Fest, I must talk about my first time watch this movie, because here's the thing, guys. I was lucky enough to see this movie in the movie theater, and I think I was in either my sophomore or my junior year of high school at the time, being it came out in 2010. I saw this movie with my brother and one of our best friends at the time. And here's the thing, guys. I had heard legitimately nothing about this movie. I did not see a single trailer about this movie. I went into this movie knowing nothing other than knowing that it was about the creation of Facebook. I had no idea who David Fincher was. I didn't know who Aaron Sorkin was. I knew who Jesse Eisenberg was because I had seen, the Zombieland, which I freaking love Zombieland, and I knew who Justin Timberlake was. I knew the cast of this movie, but otherwise, this is a movie that I went into pretty much blind as hell. Within that opening 5 minutes, that breakup scene, this movie had me hook-lined. I was transfixed, and this was a movie that I was locked in from the opening frame of this movie. What word can I use for The Social Network that hasn't already been used? Like, there are so many positive and loving adjectives that I could use for this movie that have been used. I mean, let's be real here, guys. This movie has been dissected, talked about, and it's just been dissected with every single frame, with its subject matter, thematically, performances-wise, David Fincher's directing, Aaron Sorkin's writing. This movie has been dissected to the bone marrow. So what I'm saying, guys, isn't really adding anything new. If you're expecting me to dissect every single bit of this movie this is not the review to go to. But if you want to watch a guy that's just going to be gushing about this movie, stay tuned because, man, this movie, and from this point on, I'm going to be gushing about why I love this movie so much. Every performance of this movie is fantastic, guys. There isn't a single person in this movie that gives even a subpar, a good or even okay performance. Whether it's Jesse Eisenberg, Andrew Garfield, Justin Timberlake, or even the smaller performances like Dakota Johnson's in this movie, yes, before she went into 50 Shades of Grey territory. Not to mention as well, I mean, there are others that I'm not thinking about. Oh, Rooney Mara's in this movie, and she is incredible in this movie. Oh my god, not to mention as well, Armie Hammer as the Winklevoss twins, and Max Minghella, I believe is his name, if I'm not mistaken. Seriously, everybody is fantastic in this movie. I could easily go into every single performance and dissect everything down, but believe me guys when I say this, you don't want to hear me just gushing about every performance for minutes upon minutes. But I will say this, guys. Jesse Eisenberg does such a great job of portraying somebody that just wants it all. He wants it all, but at the cost of, let's just say, a relationship, a friendship. He wants it all. And something that I love about his performance is that he starts off with this movie with everything. He starts off with everything, or I should say, excuse me, his quest for everything. He has, or he had a girlfriend, he had a best friend, he had people he could rely on, but at the end of the movie, while he had everything, and yes, he had everything, but at the same time, he had nothing. And here's the thing, and from what I have heard, Mark Zuckerberg himself said that the movie is very inaccurate. Honest to God, guys, this is one of those movies that I really could care less if it's very inaccurate because this movie is so masterfully crafted that I could really care less about how accurate it is, really. Andrew Garfield in this movie is so good. And you know what blows my mind as well, guys? How in the shitting hell was Andrew Garfield not nominated for an Oscar, especially in the sequence, which is, by the way, one of my favorite parts of the entire film, to be honest with you, is when he just loses his mind and then he says this.
Because I froze the account?
You think we were gonna let you parade around in your ridiculous suits pretending you were running this company?
Sorry! My Prada's at the cleaners! Along with my hoodie and my fuck you flip-flops, you pretentious douchebag!
How was he not nominated? It blows my mind, not to mention as well, how the heck was Justin Timberlake not nominated as Sean Parker? Again, another great performance. Seriously, this movie is a movie that is full of fantastic performances. Going on to the next thing that I love about this movie, and as y'all can imagine, that's David Fincher's directing. Like I mentioned to you guys earlier, this was my very first David Fincher film because after I saw this movie, that's when I saw movies like Seven and Fight Club. I saw those movies after I saw this movie, and of course, I saw Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. I had seen Gone Girl, of course, in 2014. I remember going to that screen, but regardless, guys, as I was rewatching this movie, something that I noticed in terms of his directing. Now, this is just how I felt watching this, so please let me know below how you felt. Something that I noticed with David Fincher's directing is just how subtle his directing is, especially when it comes down to Jesse Eisenberg performance. Like here's the thing, guys. One of my favorite scenes, because this is such a small scene, but it's a very pivotal scene if you pay attention to how David Fincher directs, especially Jesse Eisenberg in this scene. And that's a scene where Eduardo Saver and Andrew Garfield comes across that cease and desist letter. The way how David Fincher directs Jesse Eisenberg in this scene, it's very subtle, it's very things you may not even notice, but upon rewatch and upon further rewatches, what David Fincher does with this movie, again, his directing is very, very subtle, but at the same time, something that I have loved about David Fincher's directing ever since I saw The Social Network is that this is a guy that is very methodical. He makes very small changes, and how very, I won't say much of a control freak he is. David Fincher is a filmmaker that really does takes his time, and this is a guy that will take for a scene up to 50 takes. From what I heard, and this is actually true, please correct me if I'm wrong once again, the opening scene took, I think, 99 takes. This is a guy that I keep hearing is one of the greatest minds of filmmaking, and you can clearly see that, and not just in The Social Network, but with all of his movies. Something else that I gotta talk about, and this is easily one of the bigger stars of this movie, and ask me, this is the star of the movie along with another star of this movie. Well, there's technically actually 3 stars of this movie. One of the biggest stars of this movie is a screenplay by Aaron Sorkin. Aaron Sorkin's screenplay for The Social Network is one of the greatest screenplays ever put on screen. One of the best and one of the most quotable movies out there. But if I'm being honest with you all, my favorite dialogue exchange in this movie, and also not to mention it as well, some of my favorite sound mixing in a movie is the nightclub scene where Justin Timberlake, Sean Parker tells Mark Zuckerberg, Jesse Eisenberg the story of Victoria's Secret. One of my other favorite aspects about this movie is how gorgeous this movie is shot. Jeff Cronenberg's cinematography here is very beautiful, but it also has this very cold feeling to it. My favorite sequence in terms of cinematography is the road crew sequence where the Winklevoss twins are trying to go in that race, and I believe it was in London. That whole sequence in terms of cinematography, it's just such a cool sequence to look at, not to mention it as well. The combination of not just the cinematography, the editing, but the musical score. Oh my God, the musical score is so good in this movie. Speaking of which, guys, that brings me on to the next star of this movie, and that is the musical score by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. Oh my God, is this score legendary. This is easily one of the best musical scores out there, no joke. The opening credits of this movie and the musical score are just perfect. It is a perfect opening sequence and a perfect opening credits. I love the musical score of this movie so much. Moving on to the last aspect, and if you ask me, this aspect is the next star of the film, and that is the editing of The Social Network. The Social Network is one of the best edited films out there. This is a movie that runs at just 2 hours, and it doesn't even feel like a 2-hour movie. Like, this movie feels like an hour and a half at the max. It shows because it actually did win an award for best editing, if I'm not mistaken, and you know what? Good. I need to talk about my favorite scenes from The Social Network, and this is hard because this movie is full of some of my favorite scenes. The first scene, as y'all can imagine, is, well, the first scene, the breakup scene. How this scene is acted and edited and directed is just, this is one of the best breakups I've seen in a movie. I mean, it sounds even though this scene is only 5 minutes, this scene could have been at least 10 minutes, and I would have been still locked in. The other scene that I love, and I just mentioned it, the race scene with the Winklevosses trying to beat that team in London. The only thing this scene relies on is great directing, the editing, the cinematography, and the musical score. It results, at least to me, one of the most memorable race scenes in a movie. I mean, oh my God. Also, I do have to mention this as well, even though this is kind of a fourth thing, but I cannot talk about that without talking about the aftermath of it, which everybody just comes to Winklevoss is saying, did you see how brutally close that race is? And the Winklevosses are just going like, just shut up. I keep hearing about it, man. I don't need to be told how close that freaking race is, guys. And this is the scene that should have gotten Andrew Garfield an Oscar nomination, and that is when Andrew Garfield finds out that he got fucked over, he got dicked over by his best friend, and by the person that essentially owned Mark Zuckerberg at that point. I still don't get how Andrew Garfield wasn't nominated for an Oscar. I genuinely don't get it. How was he not nominated for an Oscar from this scene? It's such a great scene. How? I freaking love this movie.
Well, that's just fucking great!
I mean, the only thing I can say is that it's not my favorite David Fincher movie, but is that really an issue? No.
And here we go.
So overall, The Social Network is not just a good film, it's not just a great film, and it's not just an excellent film, guys. There is one word that can be used to describe this movie, and this particular word is the perfect way to describe this movie. And this particular word, I feel like as of recently, has just been tossed around like candy. And it's not a word I normally use, but for this movie, for The Social Network, this term is perfect for this movie. The Social Network is a masterpiece. And not only is this movie a masterpiece, but it is also one of my favorite movies. All in all, I am most definitely going to give The Social Network a 6 out of 5. This movie not only gets better upon rewatch every single time, but this movie has every great tool in its capacity, and this movie uses each tool to the best of use. It's an awesome movie. Check it out, guys. I hope you all enjoyed my review of The Social Network. If so, please hit the like button, or if you dislike this review, hit the dislike button. If you guys want to see my previous 2 videos, please click right there or right there. And of course, until my next review or video goes live, I will see you all next time.